Hello, monstrosities. Hello once again. Today I bring to you an invasion fleet video. Now, I don't usually talk about invasion fleet like that because it's been super explored. However, I think invasion fleet just pulled ahead by doing nothing. What do I mean? Well, the changes happened in the MFM and the balanced data slate, and it's made some other detachments harder to exist in one way or another, but the index shall prevail. Let's start with one of the main changes. Uh, Hive Tyrants, and of course Swarmlord, who is a Hive Tyrant, got cheaper. Now, at the cost of the Winged Hive Tyrant and the Walking Hive Tyrant, the Walkrant and the Flyrant, they now only can reduce the cost of a stratagem once per battle round, no longer once per turn. Now, that is not great, and honestly, I still don't love it. I do like that they're cheaper, but I still don't love it. And to that aspect, it's hard to just straight out say that Hive Tyrant wins all the time now, because at 195, one command point save per battle round, you start to wonder how much you need the lethals and the assault, depending on the detachment, of course. But when you might be able to substitute that with a Vect aura, I'm sorry, a Lord of Deceit aura with Malign Presence in our case. If this model is your warlord, each time your opponent targets a unit with their army with a stratagem, if it is within a foot of this model, increase the cost of the use of that stratagem by one command point. And you also then have Hive Commander at the start of your command phase. If this model is on the battlefield, you gain one command point. Um, Now it's 220, so it's cheaper than what we were taking with the Hive Tyrant at 225. And because we have like one main gun in the army, how badly do you need the lethal, especially when Forge Fiends will be preying upon our Zoe? So it's kind of interesting to think about that, but Hive Tyrant, Winged Hive Tyrant variant, still has Will of the Hive Mind. Paroxysm at the start of the fight phase. You can select one enemy unit within a foot of and visible to this model. Roll 1d6 on a 1. You take d3 on a 2 up. They have to subtract one attack's characteristic, one from the attack's characteristic of weapons equipped by models in the unit. Alright? 170 means that this is a lot cheaper. It's cheaper. And if this is cheaper, it doesn't feel as bad to take both of them. And if you take both of them in Invasion Fleet, I guess you could say that you have the same command points that you did before. Not really, but you can make it feel like it is a little bit. And the other thing about Invasion Fleet, as we know, it already gives you bonuses, right? You get sustained into infantry or swarm if that's what you pick. You could also pick lethal hits into monster vehicles. You're never taking hive predators. I'm not even going to tell you to ever take that. But it's kind of point blank. Period. We've done Invasion Fleet time and time again. However, also with them being cheaper, you can start to look at the enhancements again. Maybe you do explore Alien Cunning now for 30 points, even though that's not the one that we typically went for. A Winged Hive Tyrant that now has a 5-up Feel No Pain that can go to a 4-up Feel No Pain and reduce the attack's characteristic in the fight phase of the unit that is going into, or somebody that's trying to go into it, or somebody else. But it's not that bad now to look at that 25 points. Perfectly adapted can be saved for something else. Synaptic Linchpin we're not doing. Alien Cunning already talked about. So all of that to say, it doesn't feel as bad taking both of them in one detachment. And if you take both of them, I think unless you're going for Tyrant Guard spam, which I will like to talk about right now, uh, you probably go with Winged Hive Tyrant and Swarmy from now on. But going to the Tyrant Guard spam, with the change of the Psychophage, now no longer given an aura, a 6-inch aura of 6-up Feel No Pain, sadly the only place that you can get a Feel No Pain on things that aren't Harvester units and Assimilation Swarm is Invasion Fleet. And that's one of the things that really makes me sad, is that you could at least try to do some durability builds in other places. Um, Now you still can, it'll just be much worse. You can't really do it as effectively in Assimilation Swarm, can't really do it as effectively in Synaptic Nexus, because you are no longer have access to that 6-up Feel No Pain to keep in your back pocket. However, if you come to the tried and true Invasion Fleet, as long as you are within Synapse range, you can get a 5-up Feel No Pain. And we know how that goes. It keeps a lot of our shit alive. Enough. It keeps us alive enough. And you will have to really consider that, considering how many things are going to be killing our shit in the coming times. So, that's one. Now, the other thing that I kind of really want to talk about in relation to Invasion Fleet, past the Psychophage, is of course the Hyper-Adapted Raveners. This is another case of, I guess I could do without the leader for the regular Raveners if you are going to be getting sustained anyway, right? But in the case of Hyper-Adapted Raveners, they have sustained hits 1 for 5 models, which is cool. And also the Hypersensory Aura. Once per battle round, you can target this unit with Rapid Ingress or Heroic Intervention for 0 command points. And can do so even if you already targeted a different unit with that stratagem this turn. That's cool, that's cute. And it gets better here because they are a character. You can take those enhancements. So once again, if you're saving some points and looking for something, maybe the Winged Hive Tyrant takes Adaptive Biology. Maybe your Hyper Adapted Raveners take Perfectly Adapted. That way they can re-roll a charge roll. Especially after Rapid Ingressing or Heroic Intervening. Now, past that point, or continuing on to that point, I guess I should say, they also have bonus play, right? If they Rapid Ingress 1 turn and Heroic Intervene, you can still Heroic Intervene for the cost of a command point, or in a turn that you just Heroically Intervene. It should be said that, depending on what it is, maybe you do want to pop crits on 5s, right? So now you get sustained crits on 5s, and you already have Anti-Monster, Anti-Vehicle, but in the upcoming meta, it might look like we're taking Hyper Aggression more often. Just that's what it looks like right now, right? So if you're getting sustained lethal crits on 5, twin linked for anti-monster, anti-vehicle 5 up, you have a potentially deadly unit, right? And even further, overrun. Fight phase just after a Tyranid unit from your army consolidates. Until the end of the phase, each time your unit consolidates, models and it can move an additional 3 inches as long as your unit can end that move within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units. If your unit is within Synapse range, which you will be within Synapse range unless you lose your Ravener Prime, if your unit is within Synapse range of your army and not within engagement range of any enemy units, instead of making that consolidation move, it can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. This is pretty banger. So, if you look and you're not within engagement range, and you go, hey, I'm a deep striking synapse that just did some funky shenanigans, did a little bit of heroic intervening, maybe a little rapid ingression, whatever the combination may be. At the end of the fight phase, if you clean something up, considering that you probably have the ability to do so, you could just make a normal move and be safe again, or put somebody else in danger. And if you find yourself going in on a route of taking a little bit more risk, Death Frenzy is a little bit more appealing now. Fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, one Tyranid unit, from your army that was selected as the target of one or more of the attacking unit's attacks. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit is destroyed, if that model has not fought this phase, roll 1d6 on a 4-up. Do not remove it from play. The destroyed model can fight after the attacking model's unit has finished making its attacks and is then removed from play. So, fight on death. 1 command point fight on death for a 33 wound unit, including, hyper adapted Raveners and the regular Raveners, is a lot better than what we've really had access to before. Now, you could have done this with Brewlord Gene Stealers in the past, and that's, 28 odd wounds, right? Something like that. Because there's 10 of them at 2, so 20, and then the 26. I think Brewlord has 6. not thinking right now. But yeah, you could do that with them, but the more wounds, the merrier, right? And this goes to say to my next point, combining two or more aspects of things that work in other places. You could look at bringing Swarmlord and the Hive Tyrant to do the shenanigans that were aforementioned. You can still bring the Psychophage, and we're actually going to talk about another thing here in a second. Um, to give bonus AP to some things, buy a stimulus in your shooting phase after the small headshot. Select one enemy unit hit by one or more of those attacks. Until the end of the turn, each time a friendly Tyranids unit makes a melee attack that targets that enemy unit, improve the AP characteristic of that attack by 1. Same enemy unit can only be affected by this ability once per turn. Now, if you have 3 Psychophages, you can target 3 units to get bonus AP into. Right, that's cool, that's cute. But, that means that some Raveners could now have AP3 going into something. That could mean that your Brewlord Gene Stealers that you might possibly still bring have AP3 going into something. That means that Hormagaunts that you're taking, because they are Endless Multitude to get some value out of Endless Swarm, can be going with AP2. And now AP2 doesn't sound too serious for a bunch of little guys, but if they are in Invasion Fleet, you don't have to worry about using a command point to make them lethal like I talk about in Assimilation Swarm. If they're going into monsters and vehicles, now your opponent is just suffering from the natural progression of things. And if you're going into infantry and swarm, sustained hit 1 also helps with that too. So, well, people are bringing their last cannons and on or las guns or whatever on infantry, that means that your Hormagaunts might actually be able to do some damage and regenerate thanks to endless swarms, excuse me, or hyper aggression. Now you do what I mean by the natural progression. So when people figure out, we really have to figure out how to kill big things right now, tanks, knights, monsters, then the other thing to do is bring not those things. Bring a lot of the little ones. And if people are able to kill a lot of the little ones, you have to probably go more and littler. What I mean by that is the hyper adaptive Raveners, for example. I just said with the full unit, 33 wounds. Each regular Raveners, regular Raveners included, is 3 wounds. If your opponent has, I don't know, 3d3 blast that does damage 3, it will be pretty hard to involve things like the regular warriors, or that's regular, like melee warriors. 4-up save, 3 wounds apiece. It gets harder to bring those, and I'm not saying that just because my usual grievances with warriors this edition, but genuinely, things like that. Zoanthropes, it will be harder to bring them because the second that you don't roll a 4-up, you lose your Zoe. Now, past that, the hyper adapted Raveners have the benefit of being in Deep Strike. If they're not on the board, they can't get shot. And if your opponent is wasting these damage 3 guns on little shit like Hormagaunts, that means that they're not hitting your bigger shit, like your hyper adapted Raveners that you tend to bring in. And if your hyper adapted Raveners can finally make it to the target, they can clean it up. But also, if the Hormagaunts can touch some of these units that have blast, just to wrap them up in engagement, then guess what? They can't shoot. They just have to deal with the consequences, right? And well, that sucks for them. You want to tie them up in combat, and if they're tied up in combat, but now every lucky ass attack that you're doing on them for the cost of nothing, right? If you just hit them with the Psychophage, okay, before tying them up, of course, but if you just hit them with the Psychophage, and now just 20 little motherfuckers are biting their ankles, now you're bound to get some lethals through that, and suddenly a knight goes down. Now, don't bet on that, of course. That's not really going to happen too often, but happens often enough that you might want to consider it. Now, going to another one, the Screamer Killer is cheaper, and Famously, the main reason that you would want to look at a Screamer killer, besides, just think it looks cool. Death Scream. In your shooting phase, after this model has shot, select one unit hit by one or more of those attacks. That unit must take a Battle Shock test, subtracting 1 from that test. We usually combo that with the Neurolictor. And, well, if you're comboing with the Neurolictor and still bring in the Psychophage, you now have this bad boy going up to AP3, and putting a lot of things going to AP2s, AP3s, Neurolictor, plus 1 to wound. Yeah, you see where I'm going with this. Plus 1 to wound, possibly lethals. It looks like Invasion Fleet, if we do go the synergy route of things, has some fight. However, it's really to be said how cheap things need to be. You only have so many points in a list, so you really have to think about what you're allocating these resources to and how much of it you want to allocate to them, right? Bringing a Psychophage and a Neurolictor is 190 points. And then bringing a Screamer Killer, that's another 135. And then bringing 20 Hormigons is another 130. Bringing Swarm Lord, Hive Tyrant, Winged Hive Tyrant, that's another 170, 220. So, you know, we understand how expensive things can get really quickly. But through all of that, I haven't mentioned some of the staples that you're still going to look to bring, such as Exocrines, maybe a Maliceptor, and I didn't mention Tyrannifex because I don't know if a T-Fex for 200 and the Rupture Cannon currently is a good call. You lose if you end up in the situation where you have to command reroll, as we often did with our bonus command point. You don't have a command point for the battle round, right? And a lot of the things you're going into have an invuln, whether that be 4 or 5. If they make that one of your 2 shots, is fucked. And then you also have to roll great damage to possibly do between 7 to 12 damage on the shot that hopefully has gone through. With less access to reroll, right? It gets a little bit hairier. And while your Tyrannifex has a blank, it does not have an invuln. So, yes, it has a 2-up save, but other people are finding ways to bring things like AP4, ignore cover. So that means that your 16 wound Tyrannifex can go down quicker than people would expect, especially in these upcoming things. And so, I don't know if that's what I'd go with. However, I think I'm seriously considering Hive Guard. At T7, 3-up save, 4 wounds, it doesn't suffer the same issue of 3 wound, damage 3 running rampant, right? Because, well, that means that it still takes at least 2 wounds to come through for me to lose a Hive Guard. And if I have a 5-up feel no pain, might be better. The AP1 really does suck. Not gonna lie. Pyrovores can help, kind of, but that isn't great. But if you can put enough saves on some of these vehicles because you got up the board, maybe, right? Just maybe. I don't know if I consider them a full replacement as of now. If I'm being honest, I'm really just looking at, well, if we can Brew Lord Gene Stealer Hyper Adapted Ravener them to death in Invasion Fleet, and then get all the fight phase shenanigans while having a 5 of Feel No Pain, that's the way that I'm currently leaning towards, especially then including the Psychophage for lethals on top of regenerating Hormigons for, again, the potential to do haha funnies. Uh, that's the way that I'm leaning currently as far as how to survive with things coming up. But Hive Guard that, might get a couple of sustained shots into some infantry at damage 3 after maybe fire following up from an exocrine doesn't sound too bad. Lethal hits in the monster vehicle on top of having Hive shot cannon for anti-vehicle 2 up doesn't sound too bad. And for 20 points cheaper than a Tyrant effects, maybe. And the things that'll kill a Tyrant effects don't usually kill the Hive Guard, right? You usually want high damage, low amount of shots. That's what'll get rid of a Tyrant effects quickly, right? If you just try to damage through a Tyrant effects with a 2-up save, you probably don't have damage 3 AP4. Okay, I was going to say that, then I just remembered I literally talked about how you could do that with a Forge Fiend recently. So, you know, but it's still like D6 plus 3 shots, so you should probably be able to make enough of them, and they probably didn't roll that damn high, right? Right. Oh, Hive Guard did get cheaper, and it is looking like a more interesting option, but I do still really hate the AP1. But making them have a 5-up Feel No Pain, eh, might keep them in the game just long enough. So those are my current thoughts about how I think Invasion Fleet just pulled ahead. Because everybody else doesn't really have too much of a great spot to be in. Especially if you're going to be looking at, well, if I have to take this, then I have to take this. And if all of them can benefit from this, I might as well go here. Right? We know that I've been talking about how I feel Assimilation Swarm was really, really pulling ahead there for a second. Has some good win rates coming out. But the Psychophage no longer giving that Feel No Pain makes things a little bit more difficult. And the build still has to be worked on, but makes it more difficult there. Synaptic Nexus has Synaptic Nexus issues, even though it's cheaper. Still has some of the problems. And again, the Psychophage no longer being a part of the build that was kind of doing the best for it. I don't know. Crusher Stampede, I can't. Maybe it's just because I don't know. Maybe I'm tired. I don't know. But Crusher Stampede isn't looking too hot right now. I know everybody's going to Subterranean Assault. I know that that's what people are craving right now. It's the new hotness, but I still prefer things that let me do something if something happens to me. Fight on death, Feel No Pain. Not to say that Subterranean Assault is bad. I don't know. I just want more things that I can do reactively instead of proactively. And Vanguard Onslaught, I will say, is looking better because if you can't get hit because of lone op and you can advance and charge them, it looks better. Warrior Bioform Onslaught, I still don't rate it, but I am admittedly looking to see if there's something new there. So, Invasion Fleet, I think, just pulls ahead once again, and once people, get the joyride out of Subterranean Assault and do some new things with some of the new data sheets or new rules or whatever, new points, whatever you want to say about all of these things that happened, Invasion Fleet might ride again. I think it's still going to be a tough meta for us over here in the Tyranids camp, but I think that Invasion Fleet just got better by doing nothing. So yeah, if you like the video, like it. Got a comment from a comment. And until next time, peace out, my monstrosities.